Jai Hind viewers, we welcome you back to another session of Dialogues. Today we are talking about multi-domain operations, and we have a very eminent speaker with us today. He is Lieutenant General Dr. PJS Pannu, PVSM, AVSM, VSM. He is the former Deputy Chief of IDS. He has done his doctorate in management on indigenization of defense industry. As Deputy Chief, he initiated raising the Defense, Space and Cyber Agencies and Special Forces Division. He commanded 14 Corps. He is currently FICCI Chairman of Task Force on Modernization of ICT for Defense. He is the Senior Advisor to SATCOM Industries Association India and Chair of Defense Space Committee for SIA. He is a distinguished fellow of USI, board member, Value of Words, and Society for Transformation, Inclusion, and Recognition through Sports. General Pannu, my first question to you is, may I request you to give the viewers an overview of multi-domain operations. General Pannu, please.
Thank you, General Mataru, for getting me on to your MRO channel. It gives me immense happiness that you have been a person looking at technology for the future and also how to sustain what we have. And along with the sustenance, how do we introduce the new paradigms of technology so that we are at no stage in a gap where we have shunned the past and we have not been able to absorb and adapt to the future industry or the commercial possibilities that the military can actually use the technology for. So therefore, when you talk about the multi-domain operations, you realize that the Army, Navy, Air Force have been fighting the land, the maritime, and the air operations initially with very little to do with one another. And Kargil was one point where it was pointed out that there is no integration. And therefore, integration became a subject of debate, that it is not only that you integrate through an organization, but you also integrate through technology. If you are not being able to communicate, if your equipment does not have compatibility, and if you do not have a network where the smart systems can be put to use and you can fight a cohesive battle, there is no point calling it integrated just by making few people come together on a phone call. So therefore, a lot of technological protocols have to be brought into it. As far as land warfare is concerned, land warfare and maritime warfare can be separate for the simple reason that if there is no sea along with it, if there are no naval operations which are having any impact on the land forces, then it is only the aerospace domain and the land or army or the air force who come together. But when you are doing anything which is closer to either the sea frontier or on a coastal area, then of course all the three come in. So therefore, if you have to make all these three domains work together, increasingly coming on a network or on a web, we are moving very quickly from the terrestrial to the non-terrestrial. So therefore, space has come into it. And therefore, Army, Navy, Air Force, first three, and the fourth is the space, which comes to connect the terrestrial and the non-terrestrial assets, going from analog to digital to autonomous. So the autonomous military war fighting can be done by four domains. But the moment computer starts connecting the networks and you have systems which are riding on the cyber, so therefore now you are into SEMA because electromagnetic warfare and electromagnetic spectrum is the one which is actually bringing the entire web together. And all this is prone to threats and therefore a larger security shield is required. So therefore cyber has become the fifth domain of warfare. So the first three domains have been brought together, as people have been talking about network centricity. Network centricity is easy to speak, but very difficult to implement. Because in the future, we are going to have almost 1 million sensors in 1 square kilometers, which are going to be based on 5G, 6G, 7G. The speed, it means the throughput of communication is going to be so high. And therefore, terabytes per milliseconds is going to be something which you can't even imagine that would be demanded by all these gadgets coming together. And God forbid, more you become autonomous, it shouldn't happen that it is not your autonomous, it is somebody else's autonomous. So the battlefields can be stolen. Battlefields can be actually hijacked. And if the battlefields are hijacked, you are not doing any multi-domain operations. You have not been able to put everything together as a one secure monolithic structure. So the commanders desire to constantly keep looking at every small thing makes the complicated structure very complex in nature. So therefore, the future is that you bring a tactical battle area and you have a mosaic created, and all the mosaics put together can make a common operating picture. But system of systems and one network centricity, as we always understood, is a very, very difficult thing to achieve. So multi-domain operations are not only going to be restricted to 5. I named 5. But the moment you put the border guarding forces into it, the moment you have the coastal police, the coast guards come into it, and then you have the entire ecosystem where the civil defense would come in, your internal security elements will come in, your administration will come in, and should you capture certain territories, the administration of those areas come in. All those people will have to be given accommodation into your networks. And how is that once you have a border guarding force in the initial stages of war, when they are picking out something, you cannot say, okay, now we are switching off, now the new element has to come in, which is the Army Navy Air Force. There will be huge disconnect. So therefore, that is one domain. So therefore, it is 5 domains, 6 domains, 7 domain. It will continuously to work as one nation. So if you have to do one nation, one war kind of arrangement, then I think every citizen must understand warfare from the technological perspective, and that is the significance and the explanation of the multi-domain warfare and multi-domain operations.
Oh, that's really put. It's been very fascinating listening to you say all of that, bring everything into perspective, into a picture, and to give this complete picture as a whole. Also, you have brought out the very important aspect. You use the word citizen, and actually, these two words which you mentioned in your response to my previous question was space and cyber, which maybe we are a lot of us are wanting to know much more about that, and from an expert, hearing from an expert like yourself is a very, very singular opportunity. So my next question to you is: how are space and cyber relevant for future wars? General Pannu, please.
General Bataro, you've asked a very relevant question. First 3 domains of warfare, I think we are quite used to. Initially, when the integrated defense was created, they were talking about the 3 services come together. At that time, nobody thought that you need a glue to put all these structures together. And then you realize that ICT became the major stitching mode. So ICT is simply information technology, and C inserted, that is communication inserted into it, and then it becomes cyber. So the moment it becomes cyber, you find that space is ubiquitous. Space is God's eye. Space is something which can do some very fantastic, very large coverage of communication, ISR, that is the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. It can also give the PNT, that is the GPS kind, where you can have the global positioning. You can have a common time through atomic clock. And you also have tracking possible through it. So therefore, if you depend on these elements of space, like in Kargil war, the GPS services were denied. Really speaking, we were not so heavily dependent on the GPS. But the point is that when you have to target something, pinpoint accuracy, and you have to pick out the location which otherwise on your GIS is showing as a lat long, but how do you deliver your ammunition onto that exact precise position? So as a result, when you only look at space per se, and then I will talk about cyber along with it, the three elements of space are extremely important for warfare. One is the ISR. Unless you are constantly looking at your adversary, you will never know when the situation is turning against you. Even to know that the situation is not turning against you is good enough for you to understand what you have to do. The movement, certain elements of the enemy forces are showing up in the battlefield, or certain infrastructure is coming up, which you know that now it can turn into an act of belligerence. The ISR really turns from the reconnaissance to the surveillance mode. You have to keep all those elements under surveillance. And once you've started keeping those objects under surveillance, you will find that number of more objects have started showing of military importance. And you have to start analyzing and studying what it means. How do you conduct intelligence from the intelligence preparation of battlefield? Because now you want to know more and more about it. More questions are thrown into it. And once more questions are thrown into it, the analytical machinery, which is going to shift to the LLM, and also, the chat GPT, the military formatting of that, you will find that the reports will start automatically coming out on your table and they are going to be well analyzed. Similarly, the second portion is that all these things have to come into it. They should not be going through some handle where the information warfare or the psychological warfare or the misrepresentation of what you saw and what you analyzed. Because after all, if this is not secure, all this which ultimately land up in your table, your satellites are seeing something else. They're seeing it of a different resolution. The analytic machinery through the LLM is churning out something else. Now, if this is not secure, you will find that the commanders will have something completely different analyzed, and a decision support will take you to a wrong decision. It will also upset your time, completely upsetting your OODA loop. So therefore, your communications have got to be secure. And if communications are secure and the intelligence is well processed, then if you want to have that target to be given a certain treatment as is decided by the commander, then the accuracy is extremely important. So therefore, you cannot now get a foreign PNT like a GPS to say, my missiles are going to be riding on a foreign PNT service. No. So you have to have your own PNT service. So this becomes a triad. Now, in any of this, if there is a leakage or there's a manipulation, then your entire system fails. And something that I have not spoken about is the space domain awareness. Space domain awareness is that you may not see the fight which is happening, satellite versus satellite. The satellites will communicate or even change the programs, or there are robotic arms, the RPO will also be like an anti-satellite kind of a thing. So when you are looking at the warfare in the space that you cannot be witness to because it is too far, the naked eye cannot see, but you will be able to see a lot more how the cyber system or the cyber alerts are telling you if things are going wrong or right. So therefore, without the cyber, the space will not work. And without the space, the electromagnetic spectrum will not completely yield results. So therefore, space and cyber, they are separate domains. But really speaking, they are going to be juxtaposed in a manner that one cannot exist without the integrity of the other. So I think that is the importance of the fourth and the fifth frontier coming together.
Thank you very much for that. You have clarified that to quite an extent. It's obviously a very challenging field. One has to study a lot to be able to get a grasp of it, and which you so obviously have. And the another aspect which now comes in is that the rate at which we now recently have seen technology is proliferating, and not only that, the way in which it is impacting the various forms of warfare, and it's ever changing. Or the change cycle has become very quick. So, through the prism of your grasp of this subject, which is so obvious, can you tell us what needs to change in India to face future tech war challenges? General Pannu, please.
Jill Matharu, I'm very conscious that one is that you have headed the EME and then also you've been the DG IS, information systems. You have a very clear understanding of the future of technology. But you would have also realized that there is a legacy equipment and legacy doctrine and war-fighting methodologies. The future is so different from the contemporary or the past that a lot of attempt, it is not only in India, I think a lot of militaries are going through this, that what do you do with your legacy equipment? How does the analog battlefield get transformed into digital, and how to further take it into the mode of autonomous warfare? I think we need to draw two lines separately, or there are two chapters initially have to be written separately. And then at some point, experts like you have to stitch these two chapters together. You cannot say, this is what I have, and with this, I will fight a future battle by modifying what I have. Now, if you start modifying what you have, you will certainly be prepared for the day, because there will be some new equipment. There will be some equipment which is from a different source. The OEM and the source and the origin is very different. You will find that more and more network challenges will be there, because the inventory will be so diverse and mixed that the analog systems will have to be added with hybrid systems to be able to get more digital and have digital connectivity. On the other side, the future equipment is going to be so designed where the man is going to be lesser and lesser significant. From handling the equipment, the man is going to be moving not from actual hands-on use of the equipment, but to the decision. So the man is moving from the action to the decision mode. The decision-centric operations are going to be more important, because the machines are going to take over from you as to how you're feeding those machines. And therefore, the concepts, the doctrines, and the war-fighting strategies will have to be modified depending on how you're going to fight a battle for the future. The adversaries are transforming at a very rapid rate. There are two things in the adversaries. One is that our northern adversary has got a fully developed defense industrial complex. When you have a defense industrial complex, you also need a test bed. And unless they pick out wars with some adversary or the other which is weaker than them or not so much ahead of them, they will not be able to be ready to fight an adversary which is equivalent or superior to them. So therefore, today, as people are saying that China does not have the experience of war fighting, the soldiers are not skilled to fight. They don't have that kind of ability to withstand the combat stress. On the other side, the Chinese themselves have realized that the skill sets of the soldiers are not so good that they can use the future equipment in the battlefield. So a lot of work is going on in the Western Theater Command, that how these skills are being intermeshed with the future or the modern equipment that the Chinese industrial complex is churning out. Now imagine if they were to use a test bed. Which is the right country where they don't have any dispute? They are not the ones who are going to actually go and discharge the arsenal onto some country without any dispute. They won't start a new dispute. They would use this opportunity to, as a test bed, to try and validate the concepts, B, how they are configuring themselves. And therefore, Taiwan and India are the main contenders for this kind of a test bed. Now, should India wait for very long to develop to a point and say, hey, listen, the next war, I'm not going to be prepared. Only after I completely transform and go to the future way of war fighting, I will be. So that's a big challenge. So I think that is what you do in the MRO also, that not only you are giving sustenance to the equipment, but you're also transforming on daily basis how you can modify the current equipment to handle the current challenge. But the second part is that completely a fresh look has to be given on how are we going to warfight in the future, which is a separate chapter altogether. Say, if you draw 2050, and 2050, this is how I'm going to look like, and this is how I'll fight. So start building the advanced military programs from 2050 downwards, 2049, 2045, 2040, and 2024. So how those lines will look down, I think that is the modeling that we have to do. So one of the things that I feel that the United States had started looking at mosaic warfare. And I feel India is one of the main contenders where it is possible that we can adopt the mosaic warfare with greater ease and comfort. And I think that is the only way that all the technology, the skill sets of the leaders, because after all, it is the autonomous decision making, which is not going to be based on how the machinery works. It is going to be based on how our leaders, on how the junior leaders and commanders work over a period of time through war games. All the war game data has to be fed over a period of time and played in a synthetic battlefield. And that synthetic modeling will tell us how we are going to war fight. So synthetic models will have to be then transposed onto the actual terrain, and the actual enemy is going to be actually plotted on those GIS, and that is how the war fighting is going to happen. So this is how I feel that India has a challenge, and these are the segments through which I think we can do a future preparation for war.
Thank you very much, General Pannu. You have actually not only given a very fascinating picture of the way the challenges are emerging and the possible threats and how we have to prepare for that. And you have also given a lot of food for thought in the answer to the last question. And I thank you for that. So viewers, thank you very much for being with us today. And I, on your behalf and on behalf of the subscribers, I thank General Pannu, who's a very eminent speaker in this, as you would have realized listening to this, on this very complex area, very complex subject. And I thank him for participating in today's dialogue. Thank you, General Pannu. And with that, we bring this particular session to a close. Jai Hind.